I wanted to get a sense of what grad school was all about. I didn't know what I was going to do with my degree. So when I graduated, since I am undocumented and don't have DACA, and so I needed to know like what I'm. Well, first people were like, "What are you going to do with philosophy?" Like that to begin with is might be a dead end. So I started taking grad seminars to see if what grad school was all about. And the problem with grad school is that, especially master's programs, they're not funded um, typically. And if you don't have work authorization, you're not able to be a teacher's assistant or do graduate student research positions. And so then paying for grad school is kind of, it's difficult, right? So then I thought like, how can we fund my program? So we created an internship, and a little bit of what I'm going to give you in terms of advice is just general college, navigating college as an undocumented student, so that you could create some of these opportunities for yourself. And one of them that I would start off with is you have to be okay with being vulnerable. And we already are vulnerable with being undocumented, but you might have to make yourself feel uncomfortable and knock on some doors, have conversations with folks that you identify can be allies. And there might be folks who are willing to be champions, like willing to steward the way and open doors for you. And so a lot of the time I had to be very vulnerable and open about my status, or identify folks who had the power to assist me. And so then there was a director who was very open about assisting undocumented students and willing to push the institutional agenda as far as possible to support undocumented students. So I reached out to him and said, hey, how about we create an internship? How about I mentor students on what it's like to pursue graduate school so that you can help me pay for my master's program? And I was the first one doing this kind of work. The UCs in general, since their public institutions don't have a lot of support for undocumented students in graduate school. And so that was a very novel program that we created. We did have mentors in, like you do in the UndocuSpartan Resource Center, where folks that are there and that are working and reaching out to support you and tell you, well, this is how we do things here, we can answer questions. But we didn't have that for grad school. So then we created an internship where it was funded. I did office work and workshops on how to pursue graduate school, and I paid for my program that way. Um, so it's very important to get connections, to be respectful and courteous. I know that sometimes the institutions have a bureaucratic process that maybe there's different ways that the institutions could do things to get things done, and sometimes we might get a little bit mad at the protocol or a little bit annoyed. But I would encourage you to be courteous, respectful, take the higher road in that sense, and identify these folks that are willing to support you. These allies or staff members, champions, are also humans. And so if you reach out to them or your professors in office hours, there's ways to get things done. And so I have experience in this, what my some of my professors call social capital, like getting these connections and this networking experience. And I'll tell you how that comes into play a little bit later. But keeping these connections open my option to also get funded for my PhD program. I'm going to start a PhD program in Latin American and Latino studies in the fall, and it's going to be funded since I can't TA. The program and the graduate division is funding me. So I have a little bit of experience in all of these things. I'm not rambling and going all over the place. I'm going to tell you about our projects, but I think that it's important to build a little bit of background of where I'm coming from, and tell you that I have experience in networking, social capital, reaching out to champions, navigating grad school, and then also launching a business. And so I'll segue into that unless you have any questions about what I've said so far.
And also feel free to use the chat, even if it's just a reaction. Please feel free to engage with us in there too.
Comments, reactions, anything is welcome. I'm also happy that it's Friday. I'm gonna go play soccer, and that's one of my religions, soccer Fridays. So I hear you. But so I founded Nepantla Philosophy LLC, and it serves as training and consulting education company. And so it's very broad in general. The name of Nepantla comes from some of the research that I do of being in an in-betweenness of sorts. Nepantla is from the Aztec language Nahuatl, and it means basically being in this crux of being in two places and neither at the same time, pendling from belonging and not belonging. And so I thought, being undocumented, I felt a lot, that was the way that I felt. I was highly privileged in the university. At the same time, I was super vulnerable for being undocumented. I was deportable. There were so many opportunities that I couldn't take on. And so this like pendulum of being in and out, and being both and neither at the same time. So I chose the name of my company for that, because the work that I do is of that nature. It's also to serve undocumented folks. I'm also trained in academic philosophy. So then I do debate competitions in Spanish for folks that have no clue what philosophy is or what an ethics bowl competition is. And so I'm always like in this in and out, in this, and being in two places at once. So Nepantla Philosophy LLC is a limited liability company, and it has the benefits of a corporation. At the same time, I can do business under my own account. So it could be a company of one member owner, and I have the option to employ folks, even though I am undocumented without work authorization. I have an employment identification number, which allows me to employ folks that do have work authorization, or also hire independent contractors. And so I use it for some of the programming that I do, but I'm also hiring folks and and getting you contracts. Or if you have someone who you'd like to work with and you come to me, I handle all the paperwork, the insurance, the contract, make sure I get paid so that I can pay you. Let me check out this comment and oh, sorry. If you're curious about learning more about LLCs, check out this resource. Yes, I can answer to any of this. Like, why did I choose LLC instead of a corporation or instead of a sole proprietorship? What's the difference between having a business entity that is incorporated into the state as opposed to working as a freelancer or independent contractor? Those are all some of the topics that I cover in the workshops that I do. And then I also get into the nitty gritty of applying to grad school. What's the difference in some programs? How do you get those funded? So a lot of information here, but I'm just throwing it out there. Whatever you want to talk about, feel free to let me know. And let me see. So I founded Nepantla Philosophy in 2020, since I was working as an independent contractor with UC Santa Cruz. And as an independent contractor, the liabilities are high, meaning that the risks are high. You can, you have the risk of a lawsuit if something goes wrong with the work you're providing, as well as if you don't do the work appropriately, the institution might get sued, right? And so for a multi-million industry like the universities and Santa Cruz, it was too high of a risk to have an independent contractor working directly with them. So they said, you know what, you have to launch a business entity or you can't continue to do the work that you're doing. And so then from one day to the other, I had already been thinking about it a lot and drafting some of these ideas. And so I registered my LLC with the Secretary of State, and I was able to continue doing the work that I was already doing, but now as a business entity. And so then that changes things. We can cover those details, but the idea here is that I have contracts with San Jose State, with some of the life after college education and training I provide for pathways to grad school or how do you launch a business. And I also have contracts with UC Santa Cruz with some of the curriculum that I developed, some of the coaching for the Ethics Bowl for high school students, and I coach professors, students on what it is to do philosophy, this sort of debate competition. And I also have another contract with UC Santa Cruz where we piloted an entrepreneur pilot program. So we taught students in the in one quarter, how do you go from developing this mindset of launching your business to generating a business model, a business plan, and then launching your business. So that was the entrepreneur pilot program. So there's different ways in which having this limited liability company has allowed me to engage in business with the institutions and have clients from Watsonville to San Jose to Santa Cruz. Let me see. So another thing that I want to talk about, what are some of the projects that we've done at San Jose State? So we did the 3-part series on pathways to grad school, or we called it the grad school series. And I informed students on what are the different programs out there, what's the application process like, and
Thank you.
how do you fund your program, right? Let me see here. Here you can find some of the videos. Thank you, Evelyn, for posting that. So we recorded those videos. The presentations are up and running. All the links are live. And we also, not only did we provide these workshops for students, we also brought these workshops to, we did a faculty and staff training so that folks that are working with you can know what are some of the resources out there, how can they orient you to what is useful for you to navigate grad school as an undocumented student. And we also did an entrepreneurship series where we covered everything from generating a business mind, choosing a business model, depending on what it is that you're going to be providing in terms of goods or services. How can you develop a plan, and all the paperwork behind, so that you can go from finding a client to getting paid, right? And covering taxes, and all this paperwork in between the lines. So those are 2 of the projects that we've done with San Jose State. And we now have a partnership coming up for this year, where it's basically some of the same work, pathways to grad school and entrepreneurship, but also incorporating other components such as mental health, reaching out to students and learning what are some of your particular needs, how can we design some of this outreach and support that we're doing to reflect your specific needs. And so then we have one of the students that's working with us very closely is Andrea, whom Ana has mentioned, and they will be your point person for all things Nepantla Philosophy San Jose State partnership. And you can also reach out to me. I'm always very accessible, willing to support you. But we also have some independent contractor options that we've embedded into that partnership, or some options for you to do small projects where you may also earn a separate income. And in general, where we see this partnership going is to give you an option, give you an outlet, so that if you were to have a client, either while you're a student or when you graduate, if you have a client for a particular project and where your status is a bump in the road per se, we can navigate that process, educate and train folks so that they know how to navigate this process with you, and so that you can get hired. And that's one of the needs that I think we're filling, where I had the need to get hired through a company, or either launch my own company so that I can continue to do the work that I'm doing. And I could show you how to launch your business, how to launch your consulting company the way that I'm doing. And that might not be for everyone. And it's totally understandable. And if you want to bypass all that process and want to continue to work and you want to work as an independent contractor, then I'm here for you. That's the kind of work that we're doing in a nutshell. So lastly, I would say use your resources. I'm here for you. That's some of the work that I'm doing, but I'm willing to answer any of your questions. Ana?
Yes, thank you, Juan. So I wanted to ask you some questions, and maybe this will help people feel a little comfortable with asking more questions too. Um, so what would you say are some of the benefits of meeting with someone one-on-one to talk about this? Because I do want to recognize that on our campus, the reason we hired Juan in Infanta Philosophy, aside from the fact that he does amazing work, is because this work doesn't exist within institutions, right? This, well, not work, this expertise doesn't exist within our institutions. And it's also an area that is very touchy for some folks, right? Because they don't know of what they're actually, how undocumented folks are actually able to navigate creating a business and putting together contracts. So what we're doing here is very new. And when Juan mentions that, we can provide opportunities, like we're still trying this stuff out, like we're pushing the limits here, right? And so far, it's been good. We're doing everything the right way, right? And so until someone tells us you can't do it, we're gonna do it. And we're gonna do it by being informed, by doing our homework first, right? Because we want to show that we are able to do all of these things in a legal manner, because I think there is that negative connotation that gets attached to us because of our status. So I want to put that out there. And also know that everything you're hearing here, it's probably, you're not going to probably hear it anywhere else on campus. So if you were to talk to your faculty saying like, hey, can you just hire me as an independent contractor? They might look at you weird, but it doesn't mean that you can't talk to me. If that faculty professor seems like they want to help you, but they don't know where to start, connect them with Juan, with myself, with Andrea, and we will work with them to kind of give them more in-depth information about how they can navigate certain questions. And then of course, meeting with Juan one-on-one, right? And so Juan, what have been some of the things that you've met with students about during your one-on-one?
Okay, Anna. Yes, I will answer that question. We do have a student question here. Is it okay if I answer that one and then we answer yours? Okay, thank you, Juan, for your question. So the question is, what about for other areas like STEM? Is there resources for possible businesses in those fields? The short answer is yes. See, there are other consulting companies like the one that I created in robotics or in physics, and folks that are doing research with institutions. And so the short answer is yes, you can do it. The longer answer would be, are there particular sort of licenses that you might have to have in order to provide the kind of work that you need to do? Okay, so an example would be like if you're a paralegal and if you need to be ABA certified to provide that work, right? And you just need a limited liability company to sort of like incubate you, like form this bubble around your lack of work authorization to be able to provide that work. So, or if you are, for example, an accountant or a nurse, and you need to have passed all your state exams to provide that kind of work. That is completely independent from having work authorization or not. And for someone to hire you is completely separate, right? So then whether you're doing research in STEM for an engineering firm or providing work for a chemistry lab, the longer answer would be, are there any particular licenses or certificates that you're going to need to provide that work? Very independent from your work authorization, very independent from providing it as an employee or as a consultant and independent contractor. So yes, there is a way for you to work in STEM and for firms, for research labs, because some of these labs might be, they have their own endowments, they have their own funds that are not state funds or federal funds, right? They might have, there might be a lab where a scientist gets a chunk of money from somebody else who's very wealthy and says, I want you to research stem cell for cancer. And so they have this fund of money. And so then in order to get you those funds, you might have to have an LLC or some sort of business entity. And I am willing to like navigate some of these options for you and get more into the fine details of your question, because I have connections. I have a friend of mine who launched their LLC and they do physics. And I know of another undocumented student who also works for a cooperative, for a co-op. They needed to fund their studies at Santa Clara University, and they needed to work for a robotics lab. And so they did it through Radiate Consulting. And we can visit that page together. Radiate Consulting has chapters all over the country, and they don't only do science, they do translation services, web page design. And the idea here is that you create this umbrella, right? It's called Radiate Consulting. And then you have folks who work as consultants who have their specialty. And so then Radiate Consulting is the middle key player, making sure that you get your contract and you get paid. And the consultant is the one who provides their work based on their expertise. So Juan, the short answer is yes. In STEM, you can do this sort of work. It all depends in what field and if you require some sort of certification, very aside from your work authorization. Thank you. Thank you for that question. Now, the other question was, what are some of the benefits of meeting one-on-one with me during my office hours or working on a project? Well, because we all have different ideas of what we want to do, and we all have, maybe some of you already have your idea of launching a business and you just need somebody to get a second set of eyes on your model, or maybe you're already done with your plan and your model, your idea, and you're looking for funding. And so then maybe I can help you seek that funding, or you might just have a question about grad school. And so then meeting with me will allow one-on-one time. And if I don't have the answer for you, I will make sure that I find it and get back to you and provide you the resource, or we might be able to navigate it together. I might learn with you, as well as it's just good to meet one-on-one, because there might be things that I don't mention in this presentation, and we could just talk about them in a one-on-one session.
You want, and I want to add on to that. One of the really good things about meeting with folks like Juan, folks like Andrea, or even just building these networks of people or individuals who have very similar experiences as you, is that you can just sit down with them and you can vent, right? And be able to have someone that can relate, someone that may have already had that experiences and can affirm you in what you're experiencing as well, while also connecting you to resources and providing solutions, right? Because I think a lot of these things that we encounter do have solutions. They're not simple, but they're available. And so I'm really thankful for the knowledge that Juan brings, and then seeing also Andrea and all of the things she's getting involved in, and her desire to be able to share that knowledge with all of you, right? Just be able to help other folks navigate those fields, especially those in STEM. And so I think it's really easy for folks in STEM to feel like there's very limited options. And so I hope that you all can take advantage of this network of folks that you're meeting right now, and also expand even beyond this current network. Any questions so far? Anything that people maybe are, if there's a question that you have regarding your field, right? I want you all to ask away.
Yeah, or how about you, just so I get a little bit of an idea of who I'm talking to, how about you just drop your major in the chat, just so I get an idea of who's behind all these black little squares on my screen.
There's a lot of transfer students in the group. So I know a lot of folks here are hitting the ground running.
Are there any philosophy transfers from De Anza? That was me 7 years ago.
Yeah. All
Cool,
right,
nursing,
nursing, chemical
engineering, business.
engineering, a lot of
Oh my
STEM
god.
folks. Oh, one, I don't know if I shared, but pre-health dreamers. Another org that I know that Andrea is connected with. So for those going into pre-med, there's Dreamers in Tech, right? For those in technology. Actually, let me just give you one link so you can find all of that stuff.
Thank you for sharing. A lot of STEM folks. There's one question here. Okay, so just one comment. I was part of a program. It was called Pathways to Research, and I was paired up with a PhD student who mentored me through the process of coming up with the research paper, all the way from a research question to drafting out your literary bibliography, and then writing out a paper, presenting it in a symposium. And I was making the claim, my interest was that undocumented folks, a lot of us go into STEM, that a lot of us seek. It becomes like a normal major to follow, whether it be engineering or medicine, biochem, anything in the STEM fields. And my claim was that we don't go into fields like philosophy because it might be a dead end, and based on our cultural background, we might be told like, hey, you got to become a dentist or a doctor, and that might alleviate a little bit of the hardships of being undocumented. So that was one of the first papers that I was writing out. And it's just, I don't know, coincidence or interesting that probably 80% of these responses are STEM related. One question here is how will this work with sociology majors? So a lot of what I do in terms of presenting and researching, doing like even this little brief presentation with you, is grounded in my training in philosophy, because I was taught to read closely, to be able to compare material, um, formulate arguments without fallacies, and just in general, just speak clearly and coherently. And so then I think that a lot of the skills that you're going to acquire in the humanities or in the social sciences, such as sociology, I think that they can bridge over to some of the work that I do, or probably you're going to gain the ability to research, to understand statistics through sociology, be able to observe how folks behave in general, and sort of like just abstract yourself from that situation. I think that it's going to be like sociology or the social sciences in humanities allow you to do this very close reading of things and to analyze and to present well. Um, I think that's one way that I can say things can leak over to this kind of work. What you present, what you do, or what you research, that has to come from you. Like that skill is like, I don't know, like it's kind of ironic that I'm in the business of teaching folks how to launch a business, right? And I don't have an MBA. I don't have my master's in business administration, but I am able to understand like the process of how to get things done. And when I need to consult a master's of business administration expert and bring them on board, or a tax accountant expert and bring them on board, I'm able to do that. And then I can provide a more coherent, more complete presentation. So it's going to depend in how your training leaks over to some of the work that you do. But I can see that it can work. I hope I answered your question. Let me see who asked that question. Adriana, I hope I answer your question and give you a little bit of sense of like how my philosophy training leaks over to some of the work that I do, or how I can see that some of the work that you do or some of your training in sociology can inform some of the work that you do after graduation.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, cool. You're welcome.
Sorry, I was going to say there's a question in the chat.
Yeah.
If I can read it to you. How can independent contracting or an LLC work if you want to pursue teaching?
Oh, that's an interesting question. That's a very good question. So it's gonna depend on where you plan to teach. There are, for example, private schools. There are what are these called? Charter schools who have a different agenda and have funding from other sources that may not be federal, right? And so some of these schools may be able to hire you as an independent contractor based on the specialty that you bring to the table, based on their curriculum that is very different from a public institution. Because a public school will hire you and those are state funds, and then you're going to be an employee and you will have to render work authorization, right? But if you are an education and training consultant and have this specific niche or have a particular specialty, then a private school or a charter school may be the way for you to go, based on what I've experienced. And I say that this is interesting because even though I'm at UC Santa Cruz and graduate programs require you to teach, there's a workers union. And so then I can't teach for a long period of time because there's a union that hires graduate student teachers as employees. And so then you can't hire independent contractors through the union because it's in a way outsourcing. And so there's been problems with that, and a lot of protests where students are demanding higher pay as in for their teaching, and the university might be outsourcing for other things, and so then it becomes a conflict. And so then if you're thinking of going through the public institution without work authorization, it may be difficult for you to get hired if you want to teach like full-time through the year. But if you're considering teaching and you do independent contracting or an LLC at a charter school or a private institution, I can see that more promising. And there's differences in independent contracting and LLCs, and some of those can be tied to taxes. You might be paying higher taxes as an independent contractor as opposed to establishing an LLC, and the taxes that you end up paying and some of the flexibilities that you have are different. So we can chat more about that anytime. You're welcome. I welcome any questions.
I would like to add some things. I don't know if people are thinking about this or if this has popped into your mind, but if one of your goals is to work on campus as an independent contractor, we have to make sure that any contracting or any contractor that we bring to San Jose State is not replicating the job that someone is doing within the university, right? We cannot contract someone if we already have staff that are supposed to be doing that. And so I really appreciate Juan's approach to a lot of these contracts around coaching, building capacity, because a lot of our institutions don't have the capacity in certain areas because we don't have experts. And so as you're thinking about well, I want to work in San Jose State. Maybe I want to work with an office. If you find your champions, right, who are willing to contract you, or, build an opportunity to bring you on board, just thinking about the ways that you can, have, promote your role as an independent contractor, and the type of services you can deliver. And so those type of things, if you're ever are encountering that question or want to explore what options you may have, feel free to talk to me, talk to Juan. I think oftentimes we have to do some research before, like, letting you run with those projects, right? We have had some students on campus that have done independent contracting through research programs, or maybe they do translation work for some researchers. And so there are ways that you can generate income as an independent contractor while a student, but those opportunities may be somewhat limited. And so I just want to put that out there. And so if you do have more questions or want to explore those options, let us know and we'll be happy to talk to you. Other than that, I recommend folks, especially right now as an undergrad, apply for fellowships, right? Opportunities that are paid, where you're getting professional development experience. That way you can, what's it called? Expand your resume, expand your skills, but also test out the waters, right? Are you doing work within a field that you were planning to work with? Or it might just be like your starting point, right? So yeah, please keep those things in mind when you're thinking about working on campus. Any questions?
It's like patenting your work in a sense of being unique and different from everyone else to be contracted, or am I wrong? So I don't know much about patents. Yeah, one thing that I can tell you is that, and I hope it's relatable. When you are an independent contractor, or like you're coming as an LLC to an institution, you have to showcase that you are an expert in that field, that you know what you're doing, that this is your expertise, right? And if publishing a paper or having a particular patent, an outstanding experience, whatever it may be, it's going to depend on your client, right? What does your client demand of you so that they can hire you? I don't see how having a patent or like publishing a paper or like a certification can hurt in getting hired, right? There is that comment of like, oh, you're overqualified for this position. But I don't think that's the case. I think that, like I mentioned earlier, when I was working for UC Santa Cruz as an independent contractor without my LLC, I was already doing that kind of work, right? And so then launching my LLC was required from my client. Like, there was a long time that I didn't want to pay the $800 state tax, or I couldn't think of like, oh my God, what am I going to name my company, or do I need to hire a lawyer? And so I wouldn't do it. But then when my client said you need to have X, and if I wanted to keep that client, then I did it. And so then if having a patent is part of like engaging with the client, and you want to pursue that avenue, then maybe that's a yes. I see a hand raised, Jorge. Not anymore. I hope that answered the question. And
Sorry,
again, folks,
I was muted.
it's all good.
So the message was towards Anna in the sense of like working for the university. As you said, if they already have someone who was already doing the similar work that you're doing, what's the point of contracting you specifically? What I meant by that patenting is that make your work unique in a sense, something different, so you could be contracted for the university in a sense, or whatever program you're trying to get into to teach.
Yeah, definitely being like your work and your approach being different from what we're already doing. So for example, there's one student who she wants to start a writing group and be able to lead writing groups for Spanish speakers right here on campus, because we don't have anything like that. But because we already have a writing center that is in charge of putting together these type of spaces, whether for international students or just for other student writers, she can't really do that on campus, right? Even though it's somewhat different, there's still an office that is meant to do that work, right? And it's on them to build a capacity for Spanish, if that's even a priority of the division. And so what we talked about is, well, is there a way to build capacity, right? Or is there any other way that maybe you can shift your services in a way to build capacity? It could be maybe working with a professor. Maybe they're doing some research and they need to train students, right, on things. And so just being an expert in your area is going to be really helpful when you're also trying to train other people. So usually when I bring contractors is because we're trying to build capacity, train other people within our institution, or just do something that we have never done before with the goal that in the future, it's going to get institutionalized. So go ahead, Juan.
If I may jump right in there, let me show you something visual that might help us out more. Explain if it's okay with you, Anna. Share screen. Okay, folks. So there is something called the ABC test. And so this is from the Labor Department in California. And the idea here is that you have to meet all 3 criteria. And just very briefly to gloss over, you can read all this on your own. Part A, right here. Is the worker free from the control and direction of the hiring entity in the performance of the work, both under the contract for the performance of the work? And in fact, the idea here is that you're an independent contractor. You're not going to get an onboarding process the way you do when you get hired as an employee. You're not going to get training. You're not going to get supervised. You're going to be working on your own. If Anna tells me, look, I need your expertise on telling folks how to go to grad school when undocumented, she's not going to tell me how to do my presentation, my slides, how to conduct myself. It's just like, I'm going to jump in and I'm going to do it. And the hours of my work are going to be commanded by me, right? Part B, does the worker perform work that is outside the usual course of the hiring entity's business? So the kind of work that I'm doing, is that work that somebody's already doing at San Jose State, or someone already got training, or there's a job description meeting exactly what I'm delivering? If that is the case, then I can't work for you. But there doesn't seem to be someone with the expertise of launching a business or going to grad school when you're undocumented. So then, yeah, I passed that part of the test, right? And then part C, is the worker customarily engaged in an independently established trade, occupation, or business of the same nature as the work performed for the hiring entity? So the idea here is that I have to already have my business, my structure, very independent from what San Jose State already has. It's not like someone can hire me and then say, okay, create your LLC. No, my LLC already has to be established. I already have to have my consulting company for you to consult with me. It's not something that we're gonna do along the way. Okay, I'll drop in the link for everyone. Oops. Now stop sharing. So that's called the ABC test. And so Anna, you were mentioning from a student who had this idea, right, of becoming an independent contractor. And then we created a proposal. She had a plan. We felt there was an unmet need that they were trying to fulfill, and reached out, and the university said, well, no, it doesn't seem like you passed the ABC test. And I think that in part, from that test, what wasn't passed was part C. The student was an independent contractor, they didn't have an LLC or a sole proprietorship already established to say, hey, like, I have this full-on business that I already do, and I want to propose you to engage in business with me.
Oh, thank you for clarifying that, Juan. Yes, it's honestly, it's one of those things that it just got passed when, 2019?
AB 5, yeah, it's soon.
Yeah.
It's
That's
Assembly
long.
Bill 5.
Mm,
I don't know the year precisely. Well,
Yeah. It's a pretty recent law here in California that has been enforced around independent contracting. So thank you for those resources.
and it's meant to protect you. The idea behind this was, let's draw like a clear division between what constitutes an employee and what constitutes an independent contractor. So that if you're an independent contractor, you can't have the person hiring you telling you what time to show up to work and how to do your job. They also can't provide training, right, or supervision. All they have to do is make sure that you did what you were hired to do and then pay you. If you didn't deliver what you were going to do, then you're not going to get paid. So it's very important to not be supervised and to do different work than what is already being done there, and that you have an established entity. For engineers, we need to get a professional engineering license to start your own business consulting. I think you no longer need a master's in California to take the PE exam. Thank you. I did not know that. You want to say a little bit more about that?
Oh, no, I was going to add some resources here for folks to check out. So at San Jose State, the College of Business has really amazing resources, even for students that are not in a business major. There is also a student group, they're called Ideas, and it's basically just a think tank where people come together, put together ideas when the hopes of coming up with something, right? So if you're one of those folks, check them out. This is the GOLD program, Generation of Aspirational Leaders. It's also hosted by the College of Business, and it's a conference, so check them out. Not too long ago, our campus opened up the Silicon Valley Center for Entrepreneurship. Check out those resources. There are a couple of small business support departments. I'm sure there's a different name for this, located here in downtown San Jose, literally up the street from our campus. Whether you're a person of color, you're a woman, there are specific organizations that work with certain groups, right? Underrepresented groups. And of course, if you're an immigrant, you know, that's another group that you can get support, the group that can get support around this topic. So check them out. The MLK Library, or the San Jose Public Library, which is shared with the campus library, also has another program where people who are interested in developing skills to open up a business, they can attend workshops and info sessions. So take advantage of all of these spaces and all of these opportunities, because you don't have to major in business to create a business, right? And I know that it can be overwhelming for some folks who, especially folks like, for example, going into teaching or maybe into STEM, the idea of starting a business was never a plan, right? And so if this is the only way that you can generate income, at least for now, take advantage of some of these workshops, some of these programs. That way you can get that additional support to build those skills for you to be able to implement your career into a business model. But yeah, I'll drop those, and I will continue to share more resources throughout the year too. Any questions so far?
And thank you, Juan, for that comment, because like there might be things that I don't know the specific details. And so then this is an example of like, I do know that for an attorney, for a lawyer, you can go to law school, you can pass the state bar, and then you have the ability to practice law, right? But when you're a student and you haven't passed the bar, you're not able to practice law. And so then you're not able to open your own firm or do consulting. And so this is an example of how for engineers, you need to get that, you need to get your engineering license before you can do consulting. So thank you for that example.
Right. It's 11 a.m. So any more questions? We can just end this today's workshop session early, so you can all just go get some breakfast, lunch, brunch, whatever it is for you.
Go play soccer. Yeah, folks, maybe I rush through things because when I get excited, like if I know my stuff, I can deliver the material and then more time for us to chat, but I
Oh,
don't.
that's not a problem. Yeah, thank you, Juan. This is great information. All right, so hopefully all of you will get a chance to connect with Andrea or Juan throughout the academic year. Join us during our presentation. So as Juan had shared earlier, this upcoming year, we're going to be having a couple of student panels around graduate school in the fall. And in the spring, we're going to continue the conversation around entrepreneurship. So we're dividing it into 2 semesters. Now, that doesn't mean you cannot ask questions about starting your own business in the fall, right? We have some videos online you can watch and taking some of the information we had shared last semester. It's still relevant. And we hope that the sessions that we do in the spring can add on to what we've already presented on last year. So please take advantage of those opportunities when, as soon as we put them out there. Check out our event calendar on our website to stay up to date with our upcoming events. Other than that, I think I dropped a link here on some of the some of the professional networks that are dedicated to UndocuFolks. Maybe there might be a network in there that's related to your field. I know for folks in STEM, I don't think I've seen it in the last couple of years since the pandemic, but usually there's a yearly UndocuSTEM conference that gets hosted in throughout different campuses each year. And so the last time I saw it being promoted was at Monterey Bay. That was like 3 years ago. And so keep an eye out for those type of networking opportunities. If we see another UndocuSTEM conference coming up, we'll share that out. But there's really spaces for everyone. Doesn't have to be specific for undocumented folks for you to take advantage of those opportunities.